Here we have a few images from Flickr just to demonstrate this sort of love of worn out old stuffed animals. And what I find fascinating is that humans, as they get older, lose touch with that innate connection, something which D.W. Winnicott developed into a theory having to do with transitional objects, that objects like stuffed animals and small toys are very important to young children as ways to transition from one stage to the next. And so we know that as humans, these transitional objects had great value, great emotional attachment. How do we get back to that? How do we get back to when objects actually resonated? There was a time when wearing things out was a way of personalizing them, whether that was a leather bag or a pair of jeans, and this was obviously before the days of distressing. So here we have an example of what I would call a quintessentially human-modified product, leather which when worn begins to develop a beautiful patina, begins to develop character. Or blue jeans. When blue jeans first came out, they were stiff as a board. Jeans used to take a year or more to wear in. Now it's done courtesy of someone else at both an energy, health, and environmental cost. Our jeans used to be a reflection of who we were based on the fact that we had personally worn them out. So as designers, we need to think and bear in mind that the culture of making must anticipate breaking. And like transitional objects, where people actually develop a bond between their object, we also need to think about objects being repairable. Design for repair should come before design for disassembly. Ezio Manzini points out in many of his publications that service design is a hybrid of materials and immaterials that contributes to a more sustainable community because it reduces the individual consumption of resources. With respect to actual physical artifacts, eco-friendly products must not only appear highly functional in terms of craftsmanship, but must last longer and be more serviceable. Service in this case refers specifically to the fixability of a product so that it can service more than one generation of users. Here we have an article on cell phone. This is taken specifically from the work of Jan Chipchase for Nokia, documenting the culture of repair, specifically for Nokia phones, that you find around the world. In this case, we see a kind of instructional manual, a breakdown of the component parts that go into a phone. It's a standard human emotion to want to change and alter, repurpose something, repair something, whether it's the worn out keys on a laptop or a change of a phone number on the side of a truck. The humans like to be able to interact, and while these may not necessarily be beautiful repairs, it's still signs that humans want to have an interaction with the objects that they surround themselves with. I think there's also an innate concern to extend a product's life as long as possible. And while this isn't the case for everybody, it's very interesting when you look around and see how many self-repairs have been applied to the artifacts that we live with. Now, these may be temporary bandages, or they may last for a long period of time, depending on the economics. We also see people repurposing products. May not even be designers, but taking products and saying, rather than throwing this out, I'm going to find another purpose for it. Sometimes they're silly things, almost in the vein of the Japanese art of chindogu. Other times they're very practical, extremely practical. it's just, again, a sign that humans see value in the artifacts that they have and sometimes are distressed by the shortness of their lives. In this case, we see a Chinese man who's recycling bottles. These beer bottles are used to capture water for capturing heat on a rooftop. So if we look at repair culture, at least currently in the US, there's only a half dozen or so things that are seriously repaired, starting in order of importance: the human body, home repair, automobile repair, computer repair, shoe repair, bicycle repair, etc. The Dutch group Platform 21 has actually come out with their own repair manifesto. So it's definitely something people are beginning to take very seriously. So here we have an example of a mechanic with a car owner. Here we have a cell phone shop that services cell phones, Dr. Cell. A laptop repair shop. And of course, an emergency room where doctors are working on a patient. Here we have a Chinese street worker repairing bikes, and the ubiquitous shoe repair sign. There we have a shoe repairman. And then finally, we have what is perhaps the most interesting of repair people. In China, people actually repair umbrellas. So the repair culture is something that exists, but it doesn't exist as much as it could. Now, shifting gears, there's so much at stake in this conversation, in this dialogue, that we are in fact seeing people, in this case Wired magazine, say don't buy the new Prius, test drive a used car instead. People who are advocating for the reuse or repair of vehicles over what are perceived as green vehicles. Then there are the hard-to-swallow realities, such as electric car batteries are expensive to produce and hazardous to reclaim. And so there are inherent contradictions in products that we think of as inherently green. Obviously, this is not an inherently green product. Yet, on the other hand, journalist Matt Powers claims that pound for pound, making a Prius contributes less than the process of making the batteries that go into a hybrid car. So there are the emerging economics of harnessing new distribution channels wherever possible, and media-related products pose wonderful opportunities. So here we have